This is real, and so is this, and even this. And I gotta be honest, it really does make me sad. In this video, we're taking a look at all of the exciting concept art that has been coming out for Marvel's Spider-Man 2, and also discussing the things that seemingly have been either changed completely in the game, or were completely cut from the game altogether. Of course, guys, don't forget, if you do enjoy today's video, I would really appreciate you guys' support by hitting the thumbs up button. Thank you so very much for your support here on YouTube. And without further ado, as I always say, let's dive in. So let's begin with the Daily freaking Bugle. Yes, you heard me correctly. Apparently, at some point in time, there was a possible plan to include a scene that actually showcases the symbiotes striking the Daily Bugle. And how do we know it's the Daily Bugle? Well, first of all, it certainly looks like a newspaper office, but if you zoom in on the image, you'll actually notice one J. Jonah Jameson in the image, as well as Mary Jane. She's in the shot as well. So I am definitely bummed out that this was not included. I mean, the idea of having the symbiotes strike the Daily Bugle is just so freaking exciting. I would have loved to get another scene with J. Jonah Jameson. I really would have loved to see how MJ plays into this whole thing. And again, it's one of those scenes that I think would have been a really cool way to give us a bit more insight into what the experience of dealing with the symbiote attack was like for regular citizens instead of our superheroes. Oh, but you better hold on to your seats, because this next one is super freaking exciting, at least in my opinion. I think that the symbiote was introduced decently well in Marvel's Spider-Man 2, but when I see these concept art images, I really start to question whether or not that is the case, because we get to see this impeccably epic looking laboratory where it seems like Oscorp has essentially built up a whole lab around where the meteorite that crashed to Earth that contains the symbiote is here. I mean, first of all, just the lab itself looks super duper cool. It kind of reminds me of something from like BVS or maybe even the Godzilla films. It looks very cool itself, but then this image, are you freaking kidding me? The confrontation between Harry Osborn and Norman Osborn looks so much more intimidating. I just love that this concept art portrays this much more kind of a horror-based game, and you'll see what I'm talking about as we look through these images, because I think you're gonna definitely agree with me by the end of it that this game, at least in its concept stage, was supposed to be much more of a horror game than what we ended up with, which was fine, but I just think that the concept art is so freaking cool about portraying kind of a different feel to the game as a whole. Now, if you thought that image of Harry Osborn confronting his father Norman looked cool, this one is going to absolutely blow you away. I mean, how freaking epic does this look? The idea that we could have had a confrontation between the two of them within that research lab, maybe Harry freaks out when he finally becomes Venom for the first time, and what does he do? Well, he runs to the one place where he could possibly kind of feel safe and seek some guidance, and that would be his mother's grave. Once he arrives, he then realizes that he has been now persuaded or tracked down by Norman's henchmen, which once again makes him lose it again, and then he strikes once more as Venom. I mean, that would have been such a cool scene to play out in the game. And when we see that there were concept arts for this stuff, it just makes me kind of wish that we would have gotten some of these things to play out in the game itself. And if you were wondering whether or not the game was a lot more horror-based in its origins, or at least in its conceptual stages, images like this should definitely give you something to think about. I mean, look how much more intimidating Harry looks in this one image, as he just looks a lot more monstrous than what we got in the actual game. Now, again, don't get me wrong, I think the Venom level in Marvel Spider-Man 2 is the most fun level to play through, so it's not like they did a bad job with what they portrayed there. I just think that from a storytelling perspective, things like this concept image communicate a much more interesting take on the character of Venom than what we ended up with. And since we were just taking a look at Peter being attacked, we also did get a concept art image of MJ attacking Peter as the, of course, now known Scream symbiote, even though here, interestingly enough, she's wearing a very different style of costume. She's actually rocking a black and white costume. An interesting detail to point out there. And even images like this, which we did sort of see in the game itself, of obviously Harry comforting Peter when he thinks that he's going to pass away, are just portrayed in a much more gritty manner. Now, again, this could be just down to the artist that was working on this, who would be Dennis Chan, having an art style that is a little bit more gritty than what we end up with in the game. But again, it definitely is really cool to see some of these concept art images translate from essentially just this one static image to pretty much an identical retelling within the game itself. Although, one thing that I will point out is that the design for Harry Osborn here is quite substantially different. Next up, I wanted to just showcase these absolutely haunting images of Venom. I mean, if he looked this monstrous in Marvel's Spider-Man 2, I think we would have probably ended up with one of the most terrifying takes on Venom of all time. I mean, just look at some of these concept art images and how much more, I guess, kind of horror-based the designs were for Venom, at least in these concept art images. I just really love the aesthetic here. I think it would have given us a much different take on Venom than what we ended up with. Again, that's not to say that the take that we got is bad. I'm just saying that this, to me at least, from the concept art images, looks much more interesting. I mean, even this image right here, where we can see Kraven staring down the epic battle between Miles Morales and of course Martin Lee going down, I just think that the overall grittier tone of this image portrays the emotion of this moment much better than what we ended up with in the game. In the game, it felt like it was almost kind of like, well, I guess Miles forgives him now and we move along, you know? And whereas this image, I feel like much more so captures that sort of dichotomy of will he, won't he? Does he want revenge? Will he execute on his revenge? I think it's just really powerful. I mean, even if we're going to talk about the opening level of the game, which is of course the Sandman boss fight, look at this concept art for the Sandman monsters. They look so much more like horror-based than what we ended up with. So it's just fascinating how so much of the concept art for this game, I mean, look at the horror of Sandman attacking this office building here. I feel like when you play through the game, that opening sequence is much more so like bombastic and fun and has a much more lighter tone. But when you look at the concept art here, it has such a grittier feel. It really feels like they were gonna try to tell a much darker story and then maybe backed off of that to try to keep it more, I guess, family friendly as a whole. But I'm super duper intrigued at what this game could have been if they actually followed some of the concept designs a little closer. We even get concept art that seems to suggest that the Miles Morales spending time inside of the, I guess, hive mind or Null's mind would have been more intricate than what we ended up with. I mean, this definitely seems, at least in scale, to be something a little bit more ambitious than what we ultimately end up with, which is pretty much just like flying through a bunch of little webs and things like that. So this could have been a really exciting thing to see play out. I still kind of wish that we would have seen, at least within this level or this type of level, Miles become a symbiote character and then fight it off. I think that would have been really cool to witness. I know that a lot of people don't even like the MJ missions in any of the Marvel Spider-Man games, but look at this image right here. Does that not look more like a horror game to you? Like, just the fact that she does not have the blaster, as you can see, she only has the flashlight there, while being surrounded and searched for by Kraven's army in this abandoned constructions building area, which obviously we kind of play through a very similar idea, but I feel like the game ends up going tonally and leaning more into action, whereas the concept art images here almost hint towards, again, a much more horror-based game, which would have been so freaking cool to see, because we've never gotten a Spider-Man game that really leans into being more horror than action. As I've been doing this entire video, I feel like this image surmises things really well to really portray a much more horrifying take of Venom. We ended up with something that was definitely epic and huge in scale, but this would have been far scarier. And I don't think that very many people would disagree with me on that one. Oh, and as a bonus, I did want to also showcase this symbiote Spider-Man suit that is kind of an interesting rework. I mean, obviously what we ended up with, I think, is really cool. I also do like this one though, because I feel like the eye design on this one kind of reminds me a little more of like Ultimate Spider-Man. So I really do like that aesthetic as well. But it does seem like it would have made Peter Parker quite a bit shorter as well. So there you go, guys. That is today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please don't forget to leave a like and let me know what you guys think. Do you think that it would have been really cool if Marvel's Spider-Man 2 went darker in terms of the actual tone of the game? If they went with something that felt a lot more horror-like and felt like a horror game instead of more of an action-adventure game? Let me know down in the comment section below, because for me personally, I feel like when you're dealing with the character of Venom, that really lends itself perfectly to telling a horror game. And who knows, maybe the Venom solo game will end up being just that. Now, of course, guys, if you'd like to see more Marvel Spider-Man 2 content, make sure you're subscribed and check out the video you're currently seeing on your screen. Thanks all for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out. See you later, alligators.